latest tally that I've taken along with some of my colleagues over at the College of Urban Affairs indicates that there are about 17,000 vacant lots in Cleveland. So the question then becomes what to do with the vacant land. And it seems to me that urban agriculture might be one very desirable, innovative way of developing all this vacant land. Not only would it be aesthetically more pleasing and neighborhood improving in that respect, but it would also be a means of generating food, fresh food, to the people who live in the neighborhoods at very modest prices. And in some of the neighborhoods, there is very little access to fresh food since many supermarkets have closed down in these neighborhoods. For another possibility, this may be a way to engage the youth of the community or young adults of the community in exploring the possibilities of urban agriculture, possibly getting paid as part of it, as well as enjoying the produce that gets developed. So as far as I'm concerned, an urban agricultural program similar to the one that we have here is very much of a win-win kind of a situation.
Well, I mean, here, this Rust Belt area, you know, a massive concentration over a relatively short period of fossil energy into manufacturing things that are now obsolete, and that are now where those same manufacturing jobs have been just transferred to a new economy, a new version of the same, where we can say that in 100 years they'll probably have the same cycle will occur there, and then there'll be another place somewhere on the planet, perhaps, where if the whole place hasn't collapsed by then, that we'll be doing the same thing again. I mean, it's just classical. But what it leaves in its wake, I think, I believe that with every negative there's always a positive, and what it leaves is, either pessimism or optimism. So one of the optimistic things that's happened as a result of the decline of the economy and the rejection or the loss of manufacturing jobs in this region is that you've got a whole lot of factory sites which are regenerating, and regenerating vegetation-wise, would be fairly interestingly, but also that you've got some poverty. And poverty, to me, some people, poverty in an affluent society is actually a positive thing, because what it does is it forces people to be involved in regenerative activities, where they're now starting to value the resources that are around them, and they're starting, and it's, I talked to my grandfather and my nana and lots of, people who lived through the Depression. A lot of them said it was the best time of their lives. They said the community was alive, we all shared things, we all had gardens, we all preserved food. We had to practice these regenerative, recycling, etc. activities. We couldn't go out and afford things, so we played cards. We were actually a family again, all of that sort of thing.
When I hear the word obstacle, I think asset. An asset would be the city of Cleveland using vacant land. It would be an asset for more people to apply for the brownfield redevelopment funding that Cuyahoga County has access to. It would be buildings like this, having a couple empty rooms perhaps, that things could be grown in. How many thousands of square feet of downtown office space do we have that we're just waiting for the right tenant to come in? Well, in the meantime, we have systems of lighting and hydroponics that we could grow something in to feed these office workers that are getting Taco Bells and McDonald's and whatever else they're eating, or bringing their brown bag from home, which is better than what they're getting. Obstacles or assets. So many thousands of square feet of land outside, so many thousands of square feet of floor space inside. What can we do? Assets.
And this actually is a city plot consisting of 4 vacant lots. that used to be, that was the dumping site of the whole community. You know, people, even people from outside the community used to just come and dump stuff there, which was very dangerous because the kids would come in and play in the same place with all the shattered glass and everything else you can ever think of. And on top of that, the gangs, it kind of it demarcates between African Americans kind of settlement housing project and Latin American housing project, and with that, now these two groups of people were fighting each other over of course the drugs, and so it was very hard, and it was very rare for people to be in that spot because you would easily get killed. But interestingly, I have one of my project partners called, Angelic Organics Learning Center, which has been working with a school after school program there, and they acquired that lot through the city of Chicago and started working on it. And just by doing that, it was more focused as an art center where the kids would come in. We're talking about kids who are coming from troubled families. They've gone through a lot of stress. And just to distress those kids, used that as an art center kind of thing where the kids would be planting and that kind of would help them decorate stuff and all that stuff. And as they did that, the adults started joining from both sides. And now it has become almost a meeting ground for the whole two communities.
Culturally, African American people have gotten away from the things that that I was raised up eating, a balanced diet. Well, you have your McDonald's and stuff, so people now operate off I'm hungry, and they don't care about nutrition. They just eat, and that's what I'm seeing. So I mean, you French fries and all these different things, and the food is over processed. They don't understand that your body has to regenerate itself, and that's why you eat healthy, because whatever's in these vegetables and all this fruit and the meats and things that are grown properly, it helps to replenish your body so that you can continue to do what you need to do.
So it takes a long time for our bodies to get to wherever we are, and if we want to reverse those trends, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of commitment. It's going to take changes in our lifestyle so that they are more sustainable. You're going to eat healthy for the rest of your life, not for the next 2 weeks so you can lose those 10 pounds, because any diet which promises that is a guarantee that when those 2 weeks are gone, you may lose those 10 pounds, but once you go back to eating the way you were eating, that weight is going to come back on. In those diets, you may be missing out on a number of nutrients which are really essential for good health and well-being. So I think it's more sustained lifestyle change that helps with preventing chronic diseases and staying healthy.
Soil, however, if we invest in soil, if we invest in trees, if we invest in gardens, and we invest in all of these natural systems, they look after themselves ultimately, and they're self-propagating ultimately, which is sort of like the great vision of permaculture, is to create these sort of self-supporting systems that are designed for regenerative settlements, so sustainable, regenerative human settlements. So we need to really think about that with the way that we direct our discretionary and even our non-discretionary income, in the way that, if we're going to make a choice about building a house, well then we should be looking at houses like this, using materials off the side. I mean, most of the timber that's in here has been sourced off this property, or at least locally. We're using straw bale walls here, which have been sourced from very locally. And it's both of the sources of this material are regenerative and a lot better and low energy. So we've got materials that are low energy base and extremely local, and something that is actually helping out. If we go in and take the thinnings out of that forest, it's actually helping that forest to get better. So it's a regenerative activity to actually make this house. Now, if we go and dig a big hole in the ground and take coal out of it for a start and burn that and make electricity, and then we dig another hole out of the ground and big hole and take the clay out of that and then use that coal-fired electricity to make bricks, then we haven't got anything regenerative at all. What's regenerative about that? We're just burning fossil fuels and we're making a big hole in the ground, which is a mess. We go and make a house out of timber and straw and a bit of mud that you've got locally, and you've got a very, very regenerative activity.
Right now we have a food system that's very heavily dependent on fossil fuel energy, all the way from all the fuel that goes into the tractors, all the energy it takes to manufacture the chemical pesticides, fertilizers, plus the transportation system that's hauling that food, up to 2,500 miles to get to you. It's a very intensive fossil fuel driven food system that we become dependent upon, and I think everyone knows that there's severe limitations to the longevity of a fossil fuel driven system. First of all, we're going to run out of oil, but long before that we're going to be affected by climate change and all that carbon that's going from underground into the atmosphere. So I think a lot of what we're doing is kind of looking at some of these larger issues and saying, how do we look at our food system from a sustainability point of view? How do we look at changing it so that it's not dependent and reliant on a source of energy that's temporary, that has a lot of effects on the world?
So I'm convinced that if you really want to take market gardens or local produce to scale, which would include berries, fruits, I don't think we do nuts up here, but particularly berries and fruits, that what we have to do is figure out ways to demonstrate to farmers how to diversify their crops so they can make more money. And secondly, how to extend the season so that rather than sell from June through September, they can actually start with April, May, and go out almost to November, which really means putting together sustainable demonstrations of hothouses that work. Because you think about melons, early late fall crops such as salad greens, berries, and my favorite, getting rid of the softball tomatoes. That can be done in a greenhouse. And so then the real issue is, how then do you go and get a cost-efficient heat source for the greenhouse? And I really think that there is a market for a turnkey greenhouse package that is already demonstrated for a number of these crops. And to me, a fuel cell is probably the best way of making it work. And I would like to see a demonstration project where you take TMI's portable fuel cell, which is a small fuel cell, hook it up to a small digester that can be essentially get a fuel source by digesting farm waste products and maybe restaurant waste. That's packaged into a greenhouse that produces at commercial quantities, that's coordinated by a wholesaler. And it's something which I really think can work. I mean, a couple demonstration products will be able to figure out what's the size that a family farm can operate. Essentially, what are the market mechanisms and what's the scale economies that you're working at. You think about TMI their notion is to get a fuel cell that can work on multiple fuels. It can do everything from biodiesel to gasoline to methane to propane. But they've been working closely with OARDC in Worcester on a small digester. And the digester takes farm waste and can turn it into methane and other fuel sources.
So I think that the question here that we're facing at this particular moment in history is the sustainability of our whole culture, which means not just food, but shelter, energy, and other kinds of basic human needs. How do we meet those needs without compromising the future? And I guess my question would be, how do we meet those basic needs of food, energy, and shelter while actually enhancing the quality of our local environment, while actually enhancing the vitality of our communities, while actually enhancing the vibrancy of our local economies? I mean, I think that's the fundamental question of sustainability.